Johnny Depp is doing something really cool right now. After so many years of making us surprised, shocked, and sometimes even sad with all the crazy things in his life, he's trying something totally new. Not a movie, not a courtroom drama, not some newspaper story. This time it's music. Real, honest music that comes straight from his heart. Johnny Depp just released his very first album all by himself. And that one thing is changing how fans, movie fans, and even music lovers think about him. Just think about it. The guy who played Captain Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, the Mad Hatter, and so many weird characters that only he could play is now giving us something with no costumes or fake scripts. It's just him, a guitar, his voice, and his life story told through songs. It's pretty wild when you think about how long Johnny has been famous. For years, we watched him play characters that made whole groups of people love movies. We saw him get super famous in Hollywood, then fall into really tough times, and then fight really hard to get back up. The court cases, the never-ending gossip stories, people wondering if his career was over. Whispers about whether we'd ever see him as a star again. People thought maybe we had seen him be famous for the last time. But Johnny has always been hard to figure out. Just when you think you know what he'll do next, he does something nobody expected. And this album is exactly that kind of surprise. To really understand what this means, you have to go back to before he was famous. Before the Oscar nominations, the hit movies, the problems, back to when Johnny Depp wasn't the Johnny Depp everyone knows yet. He was just a kid who wanted to make music. Acting wasn't what he planned to do. He grew up loving music, spending hours playing his guitar, dreaming of being a rock guitar player. That was what he really wanted to do. But life, like it always does, had different plans. He accidentally got into acting, and suddenly Hollywood found its next rebel star. Music got pushed to the side. Not forgotten, just put in the background like a secret part of him that only some people ever got to see. And if you pay attention, music never really left him. It was always there, mixed into his life story. You'd see little bits of it when he got on stage with Alice Cooper, or played music with Jeff Beck. You'd see it when he put his heart into side projects like the Hollywood Vampires. But those were team-ups, guest appearances, times when Johnny could step away from acting for a little while and just play music. What's different now is that he isn't stepping aside anymore. He's stepping forward. This time, it's not about standing next to famous musicians. It's about standing by himself. The timing makes it even more interesting because, let's be honest, Hollywood hasn't been nice to him these past few years. The legal fights were everywhere. The news stories never stopped. The movie business that once loved him seemed to turn away. Movie roles disappeared. Movie studios didn't want to work with him. And for a while, it looked like maybe Hollywood had shut him out for good. But instead of trying to force his way back in, Johnny picked something else. He picked freedom. He picked music. And that choice might be the most real thing he's done in a really long time. From the very first notes, this album doesn't sound like a famous person just trying music. It doesn't feel like a movie star trying to prove he can sing. It feels like a man telling his truth. The songs have this bluesy, soulful sound. They're not made to be perfect. They're raw, sometimes rough, but always real. And that's exactly what he wanted. Johnny didn't want a radio-friendly pop album. He wanted something that sounded like late-night thoughts. Like picking up a guitar after everyone's gone to sleep and letting every feeling pour out. People who know him have said how serious he was about this project. He wasn't just showing up to the recording studio to sing other people's songs. He was writing, making music, shaping the songs himself. One producer said Johnny wanted to keep the mistakes. If his voice cracked, it stayed. If the guitar string made a buzzing sound, it stayed because that's real life. That's honesty. And that's Johnny. He's never been the type to make things fake and perfect. He's always looked for truth. What's really cool is how and where this album got made. A lot of it happened while he was touring in Europe, going from city to city. Between shows, he'd write, he'd record, he'd try new things. Picture that. Hotel rooms becoming mini recording studios, backstage areas becoming places where songs were written down. Fans who saw him during that time said he looked more alive than he had in years. It wasn't just music for him. It was healing. It was like therapy. And if you know his story, that makes total sense. After years of trouble, what better way to work through everything than through music? It's one thing to sit in an interview and answer questions. It's totally different to put those answers into a song. A song lets you say things you can't quite say out loud. A song lets you hurt and heal at the same time. That's what this album feels like. A man putting his pain on paper and then finding strength in the music that came from it. Some critics have already heard parts of it, and their reaction has been surprising. They're not saying it's good for a celebrity album. They're saying this is powerful. One early review even said you forget you're listening to Johnny Depp, the actor. You're just listening to a man who's lived, who's been hurt, and who's healing through music. And that's the best thing you can say about someone in a situation. Now, let's imagine for a second what happens next, because people are already talking. People are saying Johnny might take this album on tour. Can you picture that? Johnny Depp, not in costume, not playing a character, but standing under the stage lights with his guitar, playing songs that came straight from his own heart. It would be completely different from anything we've seen from him before. And fans would come, not just for the music, but for the chance to see Johnny as himself. Not Jack Sparrow, not Edward Scissorhands, just Johnny. And maybe that's why this album feels so important. For years, we've known him through characters. We've known him as the trickster, the outcast, the hero, the bad guy. But now, for the first time, we're meeting him without any masks. No Hollywood filter, no studio notes, just him. And maybe that's the truest performance of his career. The thing about Johnny Depp is that he's always been looking for freedom. It's just who he is. He's never been comfortable being put in a box. Never liked being told who to be, how to act, or what rules to follow. If you look back at his life, that's been the main idea running through everything he's done. Even when you think about the difference for him in acting, no matter how wild the role, he's still playing someone else. He's putting on a mask, becoming a character, wearing costume. That's the art of it. But in music, he doesn't have to play anyone. He doesn't have to pretend. He doesn't have to follow a script or hit a specific spot for the camera. He just has to play. And in that simple thing, you see who he really is. Not the pirate, not the scissor-handed outcast, not the weird candy maker, just him with his guitar pouring out whatever's inside him. And it makes sense when you think about his life. From the very beginning, Johnny was a restless soul. He dropped out of high school to go after music. He moved from place to place chasing that dream. Even when acting came along, it wasn't because he was chasing fame. He stumbled into it almost by accident when he needed money, and a friend suggested he try out for a part. He never wanted to be shaped into what Hollywood wanted him to be. And for years, he fought against it. That's why his career is full of roles that no one else would have taken. He picked the outsiders, the strange ones, the characters that let him disappear and escape the weight of being Johnny Depp. But at the end of the day, those were still characters. With music, he doesn't have to disappear. He doesn't have to cover himself up with makeup or hide behind a costume. He doesn't have to say someone else's words. Music lets him be naked in a way, exposed, open to being hurt. It's risky because people will hear him directly, not through the filter of a role. But maybe that's exactly why he loves it. Because in music, there's no pretending. There's no safety net. It's just him. And that's the part people sometimes forget. Behind all the fame, all the characters, all the headlines, Johnny has always been a musician. Acting might have been the thing that paid the bills and made him famous, but music was his first love. Long before the world knew his name, he was a kid with a guitar dreaming of standing on stage, not in front of a camera. When you see him play live, you can tell it's different. His whole energy changes. He's not performing for an audience in the same way he does in a movie. He's sharing something. It feels more close, more personal. And if you've ever watched interviews with him, you can see how his face lights up when he talks about music. There's a kind of happiness there that's different from when he talks about films. Acting for him has always been complicated. It gave him so much, but it also took so much away. Music gives without taking. Music doesn't ask him to be anything other than himself. That's what makes this solo album such a big deal. It's not Johnny trying to add another job title to his list. It's not Johnny Depp, actor who also happens to sing. It's Johnny going back to who he's always been. It's him saying, "This is me," without the characters, without the makeup, without the Hollywood circus. That's powerful because for decades we've known him through masks. We've known him as everyone but himself. And now, for the first time, he's stepping forward without any of that. Of course, there's risk in that, too. The world is full of doubt. People roll their eyes when celebrities put out albums. They think it's just another vanity project. They think it won't be any good. But Johnny's different. For him, music isn't an afterthought. It's the heartbeat of his life. And when you listen to him play, when you hear the songs, you can feel that it comes from a real place. That's what makes it so authentic. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. For someone like Johnny, freedom has always been the goal. Acting was a kind of freedom, but it came with chains. Music is freedom without chains. It's not about numbers. It's not about studios. It's not about meeting anyone's expectations. It's just sound, just truth, just him. And in that simplicity, in those chords and lyrics, you see Johnny Depp as he really is. Not as Hollywood painted him, not as the gossip magazines twisted him, but as the man he's always been. That's why this chapter in his life feels so important. Because it's not just about reinventing himself. It's about coming full circle. It's about going back to the kid who first picked up a guitar and dreamed of making music. It's about taking away all the noise, all the drama, all the baggage, and returning to something pure. And in a way, maybe that's the truest freedom of all. So when you hear his songs, you're not just listening to music. You're hearing a lifetime. You're hearing all the battles, all the pain, all the joy, all the scars. You're hearing Johnny Depp unmasked. And maybe, just maybe, that's who he was always meant to be. It's also worth remembering that Johnny's life has always had this push and pull between chaos and art. He does well in both, and this album is proof. Out of chaos came creation. Out of heartbreak came melody. Out of silence came sound. And that's what makes it so powerful. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. People who know say this might not just be a one-time thing. He's already thinking about future projects, more albums, more team-ups, maybe even mixing his acting and music in ways we haven't seen before. Imagine Johnny creating film projects where the soundtrack is his own. Imagine him turning his music into stories on screen. The possibilities are endless. But for now, this first album stands on its own as a bold statement. It says, I'm still here. I still have a voice, and I'm going to use it my way. So, what does it mean for his legacy? That's the big question. Will Johnny always be remembered first as an actor? Probably. His films are iconic, but maybe this music adds another layer. Maybe years from now, when people talk about Johnny Depp, they'll mention not just the movies, but the music, not just the characters he played, but the songs he wrote. And maybe that's all he really wants, to be remembered as an artist in the truest sense of the word. And now, it's your turn to think about it. Do you believe this album could be a turning point? Could it redefine Johnny Depp, not just for fans, but for the world? Or do you think he'll always be tied more to Hollywood than to music? Whatever your answer, one thing's for sure. He's not done surprising us. He never has been. And this might be his most surprising move yet. So, as we sit here listening to Johnny strike this new chord, it's worth pausing for a moment, because in a way it feels like we're watching not just a comeback, but a rebirth. And the sound of it, it might just be the most authentic thing he's ever given us. And if you're as interested in this chapter as I am, stick around. There's more to explore in Johnny's journey, more layers to uncover, more stories to tell. Because with Johnny Depp, one thing is always true. You never really know what's coming.